The conference room door swung open before I could knock. Derek's voice hit me like a slap. "You're late to your own execution, Ruth." His face was already red, veins visible at his temples. I stepped inside and saw them, 3 clients on the video screen, cameras on, watching. My stomach dropped, not from fear of what I'd done wrong, but from the sick certainty that this was planned. "Sit down," Derek commanded, gesturing at the chair closest to the screen. The one where everyone could see my face clearly. I sat, keeping my expression neutral. 23 other people from our team filled the remaining seats, most avoiding eye contact. They'd seen this before. Derek paced behind me, and I could feel his presence like static electricity before a storm. "Do you know why we're all here?" he asked, his voice dripping with false patience. I opened my mouth to answer, but he didn't wait. He never did. "We're here because you missed a critical deadline. The Henderson account deliverables were due yesterday at 5 p.m. Yesterday, Ruth. And we received nothing." My heart hammered, but my mind was already racing backward through my calendar, through my task list, through every email I'd received that week. There was no Henderson deadline yesterday. I would have remembered. I'd worked on Henderson materials 2 weeks ago, submitted everything early because I was going out of town. I knew this with absolute certainty. "I don't understand," I started, but Derek cut me off with a raised hand. "Of course you don't understand. That's the problem." He clicked something on his laptop, and the screen behind him filled with a calendar. Red circles marked various dates, and yesterday's date had a giant star next to Henderson account final deliverables. This was sent to the entire team 3 weeks ago. Everyone knew about this deadline except, apparently, you. The clients shifted uncomfortably on screen. I recognized 2 of them, Marcus Henderson, the CEO, and his operations director, Vivian Torres. They'd worked with our agency for 5 years. I'd personally managed their account for the last 18 months. Marcus's expression was carefully neutral, but Vivian looked confused, almost sympathetic. "I never received that calendar," I said quietly, knowing it was useless. Derek wanted a scene, and he was going to get one regardless of facts. "Of course you didn't," Derek said, his voice rising. "Because apparently you don't check your emails. You don't attend meetings. You don't communicate with your team. You just drift through this company collecting a paycheck while everyone else does the real work." Heat crawled up my neck. Around the table, my coworkers stared at their laptops, their notebooks, anywhere but at me. This was the part where Derek established dominance, where he reminded everyone what happened when you crossed him. I was just today's example. "The Henderson account represents 30% of our quarterly revenue," Derek continued, walking to stand directly behind my chair. I could smell his cologne, too strong as always. 30%. And you just forgot about it? Or maybe you didn't care. Which is it, Ruth? Neither, I said, my voice steady despite the rage building in my chest. I submitted all Henderson deliverables 2 weeks ago. I have the confirmation emails. Derek laughed, actually laughed, and several people around the table flinched. Confirmation emails for what? Last month's work. We're talking about the final presentation materials. The ones due yesterday for today's client review meeting. The meeting that's supposed to start in 30 minutes, except we have nothing to show them. On screen, Marcus Henderson leaned forward slightly. Derek, perhaps we should discuss this privately. No, Marcus, you deserve to see this, Derek interrupted, spinning to face the camera. You deserve to see the kind of incompetence we're dealing with. You're paying premium rates for our services, and this is what you get. People who can't follow simple instructions. My hands were shaking now, but not from shame. From fury. Because I knew exactly what had happened. I'd worked in this company for 7 years, under Derek's management for the last 3, and I'd learned his patterns. He did this periodically, selected someone to publicly humiliate, usually right before contract renewal periods. It kept the team scared, kept everyone working overtime, kept people from asking for raises. I want to see the calendar invite, I said, pulling my laptop from my bag. My voice came out calmer than I felt. The one you claim was sent 3 weeks ago. Derek's eyes narrowed. Are you calling me a liar? I'm asking to see the documentation, I replied, opening my computer. The screen lit up, password prompt waiting. If I missed an email, I'll take full responsibility. But I need to see it first. This is unbelievable, Derek said, throwing his hands up and addressing the room like a performer on stage. Not only does she miss the deadline, but now she's arguing about it. This is exactly the attitude problem I've been trying to address with her for months. That was a lie. My last 3 performance reviews had been excellent. I had the documentation for that too, carefully saved in my personal files after I'd learned how Derek operated. He rewrote history constantly, and the only defense was proof. Please, I said, meeting Marcus Henderson's eyes through the screen. Give me 2 minutes to pull up my emails. Marcus nodded slowly. I think that's reasonable, Derek. Derek's jaw tightened, but he couldn't refuse the client's request. Fine. 2 minutes. Then we're moving on to discuss how we're going to salvage this disaster. I logged into my email, my fingers surprisingly steady now. The anger had crystallized into something colder, sharper. I knew I was right. I just needed to prove it. My name is Ruth Whitaker, and I learned a long time ago that the fastest way to lose in rooms like this is to argue without proof. I'm 34 years old, and I've worked in marketing and client relations since graduating college. 7 years ago, I joined Vanguard Creative Agency as a junior account manager. I worked my way up through competence and reliability, 2 qualities that Derek Patterson apparently found threatening. Derek became my supervisor 3 years ago when the company reorganized. He was brought in from outside, someone's nephew or college buddy, the rumor mill never clarified which. What became clear immediately was that Derek took credit for other people's work and deflected blame for his own mistakes. He was a master at corporate performance, all confidence and no substance. The Henderson account was my baby. I'd landed it 18 months ago through a pitch I'd developed independently. The contract was worth $200,000 annually, and I'd managed every aspect of it personally. I knew every deadline, every deliverable, every preference Marcus and Vivian had. There was absolutely no way I'd missed a major deadline. I navigated to my email search bar and typed Henderson and calendar. Results flooded the screen. I scrolled backward chronologically, looking for anything from 3 weeks ago. There was nothing. No calendar invite, no deadline notification, nothing about yesterday's due date. Time's up, Derek announced, though barely 90 seconds had passed. Can we move on now? Not yet, I said, still scrolling. Then I saw it, an email from Derek sent yesterday morning at 8 a.m. Subject line, Henderson final deliverables urgent. I clicked it open, my pulse quickening. The email was brief and accusatory. Ruth, I still haven't received the Henderson materials due today. This is completely unacceptable. We have a client meeting this afternoon, and nothing prepared. This reflects poorly on the entire team. I stared at the screen, reading it twice. Due today. Not due yesterday. Due today, sent yesterday morning. And I'd never seen this email until this exact moment because I'd been in back-to-back meetings all day yesterday, working on the Carlson account presentation that Derek himself had declared emergency priority last week. But there was something else, something that made my breath catch. At the bottom of the email, in smaller text, was the line, "See attached calendar invite and project timeline." I clicked the attachment. A calendar file downloaded, and when I opened it, the deadline showed yesterday at 5 p.m. But the creation date on the file was yesterday at 7:45 a.m. 15 minutes before Derek sent the email. I found something, I said quietly. Derek walked over, leaning down to look at my screen. What, your excuses? The calendar invite you mentioned. The one supposedly sent 3 weeks ago. I pointed at the creation date. This was created yesterday morning. The room went silent. Derek straightened up, his face hardening. That's just the modified date. The original went out weeks ago. No, I said, my voice gaining strength. This is the creation date. The original send date. And it was sent yesterday at 8 a.m., 15 minutes before your email accusing me of missing a deadline that you'd just created. On screen, Vivian Torres leaned forward, her expression sharp with interest. Marcus had his hand on his chin, watching carefully. You're reading that wrong, Derek said, but there was a new edge to his voice. You're misinterpreting the metadata. Am I? I clicked back to my inbox and started a new search. Because I'm also noticing that I'm not included on this calendar invite. It was sent to your email only, then forwarded to yourself with me CC'd yesterday morning. But you told everyone in this room that it was sent to the entire team 3 weeks ago. Derek's face was changing color now, red deepening to purple. This is ridiculous. We're wasting everyone's time with your conspiracy theories. I ignored him and kept searching. My hands weren't shaking anymore. I was in the zone now, that perfect clarity that comes when you know you're right and you're about to prove it. I typed Henderson deliverables into the search bar and filtered for 2 weeks ago. There it was, an email I'd sent to Derek on a Friday afternoon, 2 weeks and 3 days ago. Subject line, Henderson queue for materials complete and ready for review. Attached were 6 files, 3 presentations, 2 analysis documents, and 1 creative brief. The email detailed exactly what I'd completed and requested Derek's review before client submission. I turned my laptop screen toward the room. Several people leaned forward to see. This is what I sent 2 weeks ago. Everything Henderson needed for this quarter. And here's Derek's response. I clicked to show the reply chain. Derek had responded 3 hours later, received. We'll review over the weekend. That's old materials, Derek said quickly. We're talking about the new deadline for additional items. What additional items? I asked, looking directly at him now. The email you sent yesterday morning didn't specify any additional items. It just said Henderson final deliverables without any description of what those were supposed to be. And I never received any communication about additional work needed beyond what I'd already submitted. Marcus Henderson spoke up from the screen. Derek, I'm confused. We had a planning call 2 weeks ago where Ruth presented the quarterly materials. Everything looked excellent. We approved moving forward with those materials. Was there supposed to be something else? Derek's mouth opened and closed. He looked like a fish gasping for air. Yes, we discussed additional elements, Marcus. You mentioned wanting some supplementary analysis. I mentioned it might be nice to have eventually, Marcus said slowly. But we didn't set a deadline for it. Certainly not for today's meeting. Today was supposed to be a simple check-in call. The silence in the room was deafening. I watched Derek's face as he processed what was happening. He'd built this trap for me, set the stage for public humiliation, invited clients to witness it, and now the whole thing was collapsing around him. There seems to be some miscommunication here, Derek said, his voice losing its aggressive edge. Perhaps I misunderstood the scope of today's meeting. Perhaps you did, Vivian Torres said dryly. Or perhaps you created a crisis where none existed. I pulled up another email, this one from just 4 days ago. Here's my project status update from Monday. It lists all active accounts and their deliverable timelines. Henderson is marked as complete pending client approval. Derek was CC'd on this email, along with the rest of the management team. Derek grabbed for my laptop, but I pulled it away smoothly. Don't touch my computer. I'm your supervisor, he snapped. And I'm an employee with a right to my workspace, I replied evenly. Everything I'm showing is already in company emails that you have access to. I'm just organizing the information for everyone's benefit. Around the table, I could see expressions changing. People were sitting up straighter, paying attention in a different way now. This wasn't the usual Derek Patterson show where someone got torn down, and everyone else breathed a sigh of relief that it wasn't them. This was something new. My phone buzzed in my pocket. I ignored it. Derek was pacing again, but this time it wasn't performative dominance. He was genuinely agitated, trying to figure out how to regain control of the narrative. Let me show you something else, I said, opening a new email thread. This is the original Henderson contract scope, agreed upon 18 months ago and updated quarterly. I pulled this from our shared project drive this morning. Why were you looking at that this morning? Derek demanded. Because I always review active contracts at the start of each week, I said. It's part of my process. And according to this scope, we're not only current on all deliverables, we're actually ahead by 2 weeks on the next quarter's planning materials. On screen, Marcus was typing something on his phone. Vivian had her arms crossed, her expression hard. These were not people who liked being dragged into internal office drama, especially when it was clear they'd been used as props in Derek's performance. I think we should reschedule this meeting, Marcus said abruptly. Derek, it seems you have some internal issues to sort out. Ruth, please send me the materials you completed 2 weeks ago. We'll review them on our end and follow up with questions. Of course, I said. I can resend them immediately. And Derek, Marcus continued, his voice taking on a steely quality I'd never heard before, I'd like to schedule a call with you and your supervisor later this week. We need to discuss how Henderson account communications are being managed. Derek's face went pale. Marcus, I can explain. Later, Marcus said firmly. Vivian, do we have anything else? Vivian shook her head, her eyes still on Derek. Nothing that can't wait. Ruth, thank you for your professionalism. The screen went dark as they disconnected. The conference room was utterly silent. 23 people stared at their devices, at the table, at anything except Derek or me. I could hear the air conditioning humming, someone's phone vibrating against the table surface, the distant sound of voices from the hallway. Derek stood frozen, his hand still raised from when he'd been trying to interrupt Marcus. Slowly, he lowered it. Meeting dismissed, Derek said quietly. People scattered like startled birds. Within 30 seconds, the conference room was empty except for Derek and me. He stayed at the front of the room, staring at the blank screen where our clients had been. I closed my laptop and carefully placed it in my bag. You just made a huge mistake, Derek said without looking at me. Did I? I slung my bag over my shoulder. Which part? Defending myself against false accusations. Or showing clients that their account manager actually knows what she's doing. He turned then, and the look on his face sent a chill down my spine. It wasn't anger anymore. It was calculation. You think you're smart. You think you won. But you have no idea what you just started. I didn't start anything, I said, walking toward the door. You called a meeting to humiliate me in front of clients. You created a fake deadline to make me look incompetent. I just had the receipts to prove otherwise. Those clients are going to forget this in a week, Derek said. But I'm your supervisor. Every day. Every project. Every performance review. You just made an enemy, Ruth. I paused at the door, my hand on the handle. I've been working under you for 3 years, Derek. You were already my enemy. I just finally had witnesses. I walked out before he could respond. Back at my desk, my hands finally started shaking. The adrenaline that had kept me sharp and focused in the conference room was draining away, leaving me hollow and jittery. I sat down heavily in my chair and took several deep breaths. My phone showed 3 missed messages. 2 from coworkers, holy shit, and are you okay? The third was from Amanda Cross, one of the senior directors who'd been in the meeting. Can you come to my office when you have a minute? I texted back, on my way. Amanda's office was on the third floor, in the executive wing I rarely visited. She was standing at her window when I knocked, looking out at the parking lot below. She turned and gestured for me to close the door. That was quite a meeting, she said. I didn't mean to cause a scene, I started, but she held up a hand. Don't apologize. What you did was necessary. She sat down at her desk and pulled out a notepad. I need you to send me all those emails you referenced. The deliverables you submitted 2 weeks ago, the calendar creation dates, everything. Am I in trouble? Amanda looked at me over her reading glasses. Ruth, you just publicly proved that a department manager created a false deadline to humiliate you in front of clients. No, you're not in trouble. But Derek Patterson definitely is. Relief flooded through me, so intense I felt dizzy. He said clients would forget about it. Maybe they would have if it was just an internal dispute, Amanda said. But Marcus Henderson has already copied me on an email requesting a formal review of how his account is being managed. And Vivian Torres sent a separate message asking who Derek's supervisor is. These are sophisticated business people. They recognized manipulation when they saw it. She typed something on her computer. I'm also concerned about Derek's pattern of behavior. This isn't the first complaint I've heard about him creating hostile work environments. Really? The word came out before I could stop it. Amanda nodded. 3 other employees have filed informal complaints in the past 18 months. Nothing formal enough to trigger an investigation, but enough to establish a pattern. Your incident today, with clients as witnesses, changes everything. My phone buzzed. An email from Derek, report to my office immediately. Amanda saw my expression. What is it? Derek wants to see me. Forward me that email, Amanda said. And don't go. I'm instructing you not to have any one-on-one meetings with Derek until we've completed a formal review. If he needs to communicate with you, it goes through me or another manager. He's going to be furious. Let him be furious somewhere away from you, Amanda said firmly. Go back to your desk. Work on your projects. Send me those emails. And Ruth? Document everything from this point forward. Every interaction, every email, every conversation. I spent the rest of the afternoon in a strange state of focus numbness. I compiled all the Henderson emails into a folder and sent it to Amanda. I worked on the Carlson presentation. I responded to client messages. I acted like nothing had happened, even though my coworkers kept shooting me curious glances. Derek sent 3 more emails demanding meetings. I forwarded each one to Amanda without responding. Around 3 p.m., I saw him storm past my desk toward the elevators, his face thunderous. He didn't look at me. At 4:30, Amanda called. Derek's been placed on administrative leave pending investigation. His access to company systems has been suspended. Any projects he was managing are being redistributed. I'm assigning Henderson and 3 other accounts to you directly. You'll report to me until we hire a new manager. Wait, they fired him? Not yet, Amanda said carefully. But creating false documentation to justify disciplining an employee is a serious violation of company policy. So is using client meetings for internal power plays. The investigation will determine next steps, but he won't be in the office for at least 2 weeks. After she hung up, I sat staring at my computer screen. 7 hours ago, I'd walked into a conference room expecting a client meeting. Instead, I'd been ambushed, publicly attacked, and set up for humiliation. Now my boss was suspended and I'd essentially been promoted. My desk phone rang. Marcus Henderson. Ruth, I wanted to apologize, Marcus said without preamble. We had no idea Derek was using our meeting for that purpose. If we'd known, we would have refused to participate. It's not your fault, I said. Derek blindsided everyone. Vivian and I have been discussing it, Marcus continued. We're not comfortable with how this account has been managed at the supervisory level. But we're very comfortable with you. We'd like to request that you remain our primary contact going forward, regardless of who replaces Derek. I'd be honored, I said, meaning it. And thank you for speaking up in the meeting. Your support made a difference. You made it easy by having documentation, Marcus said. That was smart thinking under pressure. Not everyone can do that. After he hung up, I leaned back in my chair and closed my eyes. The office was quiet now, most people having left for the day. I should leave too, go home, process everything that had happened. Instead, I pulled up my email and started a new folder, evidence. I moved every email from Derek from the past 3 years into it. Every meeting note, every project critique, every vague accusation or sudden deadline change. A pattern emerged in the timestamps. Derek consistently sent urgent emails late Friday afternoons or early Monday mornings, times when employees couldn't immediately respond or defend themselves. He created chaos and then blamed others for the resulting confusion. My phone buzzed with a text from an unknown number, "You're going to regret this. You think you're protected now, but it won't last." I screenshotted it immediately and forwarded it to Amanda with a simple note, "Received this 10 minutes ago." She called within 2 minutes. That's Derek's personal cell phone number. I recognize it. This is harassment. Forward that to HR and to me. We're documenting everything. He's really desperate, I said. Desperate people do stupid things, Amanda replied. Which is why I want you working from home tomorrow. Let this initial dust settle. I'll call you if anything urgent comes up. That night, I barely slept. Every time I closed my eyes, I saw Derek's face in the conference room, the moment when he realized his trap had backfired. The look of calculation when he'd threatened me afterward. The text message that proved he was willing to cross professional lines. By morning, my inbox had exploded. The incident had made its way through the office grapevine. 3 former coworkers who'd left the company reached out asking if Derek was finally facing consequences. He did the same thing to me, one wrote. Made up a deadline I'd missed, humiliated me in front of my team. I quit rather than fight it. I forwarded these messages to Amanda and HR. Each one added another brick to the wall of evidence against Derek. The investigation took 8 days. During that time, I worked from home, managed my expanded portfolio, and had 3 separate interviews with HR and the company's legal team. They asked detailed questions about every interaction I'd had with Derek over 3 years. We're finding a pattern, the HR director told me during the final interview. 7 employees have now come forward with similar experiences. Derek would manufacture crises, blame team members publicly, and use the resulting fear to maintain control. Why did it take so long for anyone to notice? I asked. Because his targets usually quit before filing formal complaints, she said. And the ones who stayed learned to keep their heads down. You were the first person who fought back with documentation in a situation where we had external witnesses. On day 9, Amanda called me into her office. Derek's suspension had been converted to termination. The company was conducting a full review of his entire tenure, looking for evidence of fraud or misappropriation. Early findings suggested he'd been taking credit for other people's work in performance reviews, and potentially inflating his own sales numbers. We owe you an apology, Amanda said. Derek should have been stopped years ago. The fact that he was able to create such a toxic environment under our watch is a failure of management. What happens now? I asked. Several things, Amanda said, pulling out a folder. First, you're being officially promoted to Senior Account Director. The role comes with a significant salary increase and direct oversight of our top-tier clients, including Henderson. Second, we're implementing new policies around documentation and accountability. Every manager will be required to maintain transparent project timelines accessible to their teams. No more surprise deadlines or moving goalposts. She slid the folder across her desk. Inside was my new employment contract and a letter of apology from the CEO. Third, Amanda continued, we'd like you to participate in developing training for new managers on appropriate team leadership. Your experience and how you handled it provides valuable lessons. I looked at the salary number on the contract. It was 30% more than I'd been making. This is generous. It's what you were worth all along, Amanda said. Derek kept you suppressed because he was threatened by your competence. We're correcting that now. Over the next month, the full scope of Derek's misconduct became clear. He'd been systematically taking credit for his team's work, inflating billable hours, and creating false narratives about employee performance to justify denying raises. The company settled quietly with 3 former employees who'd left under his management. Marcus Henderson wasn't quiet about what had happened. Within the industry, word spread about how Vanguard Creative had handled the situation. Several potential clients reached out specifically requesting to work with me. 6 months later, I sat in the same conference room where Derek had tried to destroy me. This time, I was running the meeting. My team of 4 account managers sat around the table, and on the screen were 3 potential new clients I'd been courting for weeks. Let's talk about timelines, I said, pulling up a shared calendar visible to everyone. Everything we commit to will be documented here, with clear deadlines and deliverable descriptions. If anything changes, everyone gets notified immediately. No surprises. One of the clients, a CEO named Thomas, nodded appreciatively. We've heard good things about your transparency practices. It's refreshing. After the meeting, my team stayed behind to debrief. These were people I'd personally recruited, all of them experienced professionals who'd worked in toxic environments before. We'd built something different here, something based on mutual respect and clear communication. How did the Henderson quarterly review go? Asked Priya, my newest hire. Excellent, I said. They're expanding their contract by 40%. And they specifically mentioned that the reason they trust us is because of how we handled that crisis last year. The Derek situation. Priya had heard the story during her interview. It had become part of Vanguard's culture now, a cautionary tale about what happens when ego overrides ethics. That situation, I confirmed. It taught everyone here that documentation matters. Truth matters. And no one is too powerful to be held accountable. My phone buzzed with an email from Amanda. She'd been promoted to VP of Operations and had become a strong ally. The email contained a link to a LinkedIn post. I clicked it and saw Derek's profile. He was working at a much smaller agency now, in a non-management role. His profile made no mention of his time at Vanguard. Looks like consequences have a long memory, I murmured. That evening, I met with a group of women in marketing. We'd formed an informal network after my story spread, people who'd experienced similar workplace bullying, and wanted to support each other. 10 of us sat in a cafe, sharing strategies for documentation, discussing when to fight, and when to walk away. The key is knowing your worth, I told them. Derek spent 3 years trying to convince me I was mediocre. I almost believed it. But I kept records because some part of me knew the narrative didn't match reality. How did you stay calm in that meeting? One woman asked. I would have cried or yelled or just frozen. I was terrified, I admitted. But I knew if I showed emotion, Derek would use it against me. So I focused on the evidence. Let the facts speak louder than his performance. A younger woman named Casey spoke up. I'm dealing with something similar now. My boss keeps changing project requirements after I've completed work, then claiming I didn't follow instructions. Document everything, I said immediately. Email confirmations of every conversation. Save chat logs. Create paper trails. Not because you're paranoid, but because you deserve to protect yourself. 1 year after the conference room incident, Vanguard held its annual awards ceremony. I was nominated for the Leadership Excellence Award, which felt surreal considering where I'd been 12 months earlier. I didn't expect to win. The competition included people who'd been with the company 15 years or more. When they called my name, I almost didn't hear it. Amanda had to nudge me toward the stage. The CEO handed me a glass award engraved with my name. Ruth Whitaker exemplifies everything we want Vanguard to represent: integrity, excellence, and courage. Her commitment to truth, even in difficult circumstances, helped us identify and correct serious cultural problems. She didn't just save her own career, she made this entire company better. The applause was genuine, warm. I saw faces of people who'd been in that conference room, who'd witnessed Derek's attack and my defense. Some of them had privately thanked me later for standing up, for showing them it was possible. In my acceptance speech, I kept it simple. A year ago, I learned that the most powerful weapon against workplace bullying is documentation. Not because it's about catching people in lies, but because truth matters. When we commit to honesty and transparency, we create environments where everyone can succeed. Thank you for recognizing that principle. Later, at the reception, Marcus Henderson found me. Congratulations. Well deserved. Thank you for having my back that day, I said. Your intervention changed everything. You made it easy by being prepared, Marcus said. But I've been thinking about that meeting a lot. We were complicit in Derek's plan without realizing it. We let ourselves be used as props in his power play. That was a failure on our part. You didn't know, I said. We should have questioned why we were suddenly needed in an urgent meeting with no clear agenda, he countered. From now on, Vivian and I are a lot more careful about what meetings we agree to and why. The conversation reminded me that the impact of that day had rippled far beyond just my career or Derek's termination. It had changed how people thought about accountability, transparency, and the dynamics of workplace power. My team had grown to 8 people now. We managed 40% of Vanguard's highest value accounts. Our retention rate was 97%, the highest in the company. And the reason was simple: we treated people with respect and documented everything clearly. The anti-Derek approach, Priya joked once, but she was right. Everything I'd built was a direct response to everything he'd done wrong. His toxicity had created a blueprint for how not to lead. I'd simply inverted it. At home that night, I looked at my award sitting on the shelf. Next to the new one was something else I'd framed. A printed screenshot of that calendar invite Derek had created, the one with the metadata showing it was made the same day he'd accused me of missing a deadline set weeks earlier. I kept it not as a trophy but as a reminder. A reminder that documentation matters. That truth matters. That standing up for yourself, even when terrified, can change everything. My phone buzzed. An email from Casey, the young woman from the networking group. I used your advice. Documented everything. When my boss tried to blame me for his mistake in front of our director, I had emails proving otherwise. He was reprimanded. I was believed. Thank you for showing me this was possible. I wrote back, you did the hard part. I just shared what worked for me. Proud of you. That was the real legacy of that conference room confrontation. Not my promotion or Derek's termination, or even the policy changes at Vanguard. It was the knowledge, spreading through whispered conversations and networking groups and mentoring relationships, that you didn't have to accept abuse. That preparation was power. That evidence was protection. Derek had tried to make me an example of what happened when you didn't meet his standards. Instead, I'd become an example of what happened when you refused to accept false narratives. The irony wasn't lost on me. 2 years after the incident, I barely thought about Derek anymore. His name came up occasionally when training new managers on what not to do, but he'd faded from a present threat to a historical footnote. My career had moved so far beyond that moment. I was in my office when Amanda stopped by. I have news. Derek applied for a position here. Junior account coordinator. You're joking. Completely serious. He apparently didn't realize his old employment records would flag in the system. She shook her head. The application was rejected automatically, but the audacity is stunning. I laughed, genuinely amused. Some people never learn. No, Amanda agreed. But some people do. Your team has the highest employee satisfaction scores in the company. You've developed 4 people who've gone on to management roles elsewhere. You're being considered for director-level promotion. That's learning. After she left, I turned back to my computer. My inbox was full of the usual chaos: client requests, team questions, project updates. But it was organized chaos, documented chaos, transparent chaos. The kind you could manage because everyone knew what was expected and when. I pulled up a blank document and started typing, "Best practices for transparent team management." It would become a training guide for new managers, distilling everything I'd learned from both Derek's negative example and my own trial by fire. The conference room door in my memory had stopped swinging. The sound of Derek's voice no longer echoed. What remained was the lesson, clear and permanent: you don't have to shout to be heard. You don't have to fight if you have facts. You just need to let the truth speak in the room your opponent chose for your humiliation. And sometimes that truth doesn't just defend you. It changes everything.